Oh, that's cool. It dings you when it starts recording. Okay, so my section in this book was called the Auditing Classifications and Types. The previous sections in this chapter pretty much ran through what auditing is and why auditing is important to make sure everything is working correctly. This section starts off with defining the two types of audits. One is internal and one is external. Let's go to the next slide. Here we go. Internal audits, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. Pretty much an employee or someone associated with the company or group or system being audited will go through their process, something predefined, to make sure that everything is working correctly, everything's being recorded, everything's being saved for as long as it needs to be saved, and that's all working smoothly. The external audit is going to be when the group or organization brings in another group from outside, someone not associated with the product or the process. It's important to bring in an external auditor. Generally, people do it about once a year, just to make sure that everything that needs to be checked is being checked. It's better to have an outside set of eyes to be able to run through and say, yeah, you're checking what you need to check, or maybe you should make sure you're checking over here, or why aren't you checking this, or why are you checking this, because we don't really care about one piece. That probably happens a lot. There are three types of audits. Push the button too damn early. There are three types of audits: automatic, manual, and hybrid. Again, pretty self-explanatory. Automatic means the system does it itself, whether it's a hand-rolled operation, the programmers put in some type of a check and balance system to where the system will go through its own logs and check for errors or check for flags that are thrown up during operation. Manual means somebody sat down at the computer or at a pile of documents and actually manually checked everything to make sure changes that were made were recorded, to make sure that data that they wanted to get was recorded, and that it's all being saved and human readable and everything. And the third one is the hybrid, which is the mix of the automatic and the manual. Most auditing falls under a hybrid because obviously I really doubt someone's going to pay someone to go through, let's say, a huge license database and manually read through every single license at every single machine to make sure that they're all in compliance. When the computer can do it itself, and you're just doing a diff through the files to make sure that everything is the same. The side effects of an audit. These audits do strain the system. You're going to have performance problems. You're going to have a ton of information that's generated. Your reports are all generated. All the documentation for the audit is going to be huge. And yes, someone should probably audit the audit to make sure that whatever was done correctly. Another side effect is going to be the possibility of crashing the system. If you're doing a security audit or you're doing a data audit and the operator or the auditor happens to push the wrong button and they drop your entire table, or they format the hard drive, or they for some reason unlink the SAN from the system, and these are all things that could definitely happen, and you're pretty much screwed at that point. Oh, I forgot one more. My favorite thing for the side effects is the friction between the operator and the auditor. Whoever runs the system is going to be pissed that there's somebody else coming in behind them and making, looking over their shoulder. Why aren't you doing this? Or why are you doing this a certain way? It could make them mad. They'll make the auditor's life harder. They'll again make the operator's life harder, and it becomes a game of one-upsmanship. The benefits of an audit pretty much are going to be that it makes life easier for the company. You're going to make everybody feel better that whatever is happening correctly. If we're talking about sales, then people will know that all the data is being recorded correctly, the transactions are in order, all of the money is in order, all the taxes are in order, and all of the numbers are real, and you don't have an Enron situation where you're making numbers up. It gives a good concrete to the data. No other benefits: enforcement of policy, enforcement of regulation, or enforcement of law, HIPAA, stuff like that. Going through and auditing that the data is stored correctly, is processed correctly, is transferred correctly. It helps identify security gaps. When you're going through, you can audit what is being saved where, or how it's being saved. Passwords in plain text, not a good thing. You should probably hash them, maybe salt the hash a little bit. I've already said sensitive security. and identifies and removes doubts. Kind of the same thing as sense of security. Everyone can feel better knowing that whatever is happening correctly. Is pretty much the benefit of the audit. And I'm already at 5:20. This is gonna be hilarious. I'm gonna try and cut this up and make it all work. Okay, what are you going to audit? You can audit anything. Like I said, there's going to be audits of the audit, and they're going to probably audit the audit of the audit. Whatever you're going to audit is going to be based on what the purpose of the audit is. Some of your standard audits: financial, security, compliance, investigative, preventative. Financial audits. If you have a big Wall Street firm, they have to keep tax records, they have to keep sales records, transaction records for a certain amount of time. So you want to audit the storage and make sure that they actually have the records from the right time frame. Security audits, you're going to want to make sure that the users who have permission to do things are in the right groups. You don't have any rogue users, you don't have any rogue admins, you don't have any accounts that no one knows about. All of these security accounts, all the accounts with privileges are recorded, stuff like that. Oh, compliance. HIPAA, PCI compliance, these are all things that need to be that are done for legal matters, for industry compliance matters. Basically, you're going to want systems in place to make sure that credit cards are being stored correctly, the transactions are being stored correctly, firewalls are done correctly, nothing is out in the open, the networks that need to be separated the VLANs, or however you're doing it, DMZs, however you're doing it, are all done correctly. Investigative and preventative are both kind of the same thought. You're going to go through and make sure that everything is being done the best way it can be done. You're going to test out systems. You're going to audit a system to make sure that it works correctly, that there are no rogue processes, there's no steps that weren't known, there's no bad steps. When you're doing, this is probably more for development and testing, you don't want to have a database process which then kills the server. That's probably a bad thing to have in production. And then I was going to try and demo an audit. I don't know how to do that. I mean, an audit is an audit. It's another database, basically, which contains data relating to the operation of the first database, which is going to have all the information that you wanted from before. The basic stuff that every single audit is going to have is there's going to be a piece of data or an entity, which will be whatever was changed. So if a user logs in, the system changes the login file to add the latest login with the username, the time the user accessed it. Or it could be a transaction. If you're talking about Walmart, they're going to put all of their transactions for the day into a big file. So the end of the file will have the most recent transaction. Another thing that's recorded is the change that was made to the first. So if you have, let's say, a running total, every time you change the running total, there's a log file somewhere which says what was added to it and in what order. So you can go back and double check that the transaction running total is correct. The third thing that everyone's going to want to know is who made the change, whether it's a system user, a physical user, a process user. They're all going to have IDs that you can record to make sure that the right processes which are made to change this are actually doing it. And the final one that's going to probably be pretty helpful is the time and reason for the change. Every time a change is made, it's good to have a time and a date time stamp on it so that you can keep everything in order. So if you need to go back and figure out who broke what, you can go back and see the last time it was up, and then you can go and see who used it after that time to break it. That's going to probably be your suspect. That's the end of my presentation. It's going to probably be over 5 minutes. Sorry about that, Dr. Cooper. I tried to keep it below 5, but I just couldn't do it.